All right. All right, y'all. We are at the big 9 to the 0. Can you believe it, Buns? We're at 90.
That's awesome, cruising through the big 10 digits like it's nothing.
In a mere 10 weeks, but yeah, we're going to hit the trips. Oh, man. All right. I almost hate to ask, Buns, but do you have your shout-outs?
We didn't even do any sort of intro. Hello, I'm HB. This is my colleague, associate, podcastee's mate, Yubi. Say hello, Yubi.
Hello! Yeah, you would think by episode 90 I remember to do that, but every now and then I falter.
Right. No, well, now I'm questioning myself. Do I have any shout-outs?
Do you want me to go with mine while you think? I do. My first shout-out goes to Ro, and I'm sure a lot of you guys that listen to this, that listen to other podcasts, are already aware of Ro's podcast, Realm Maintenance. It comes out every Tuesday, and it's basically a roundup of all things Warcraft and other WoW podcasts. And he was kind enough to give us a shout-out on what we did last week, Buns, which was what is wrong with World of Warcraft.
Right, yeah.
So, again, I assume most of you guys that listen to this and listen to WoW podcasts are already aware of it, but if not, check him out. He's at Ro, is his personal account on Twitter, and Realm Maintenance for the show's Twitter. So give him a follow. If you haven't subscribe, give it a listen. Thank you, Ro. You're a good dude. You do good things.
Ro, you the man?
That's my first shout-out. Second shout-out goes to Pooh for giving us some very nice information from the PTR in regards to graveyard changes in Warsong Gulch, which ties into what we will be talking about, but we don't want to spoil the lead. And I wanted to go in and make a video for it before the cast. Unfortunately, the PTR was down, so I will try again to do that tomorrow so you can get sort of a visual idea of what it is we're talking about. And you can always go to TI and check out his thread, and he put up some screenshots. So shout out to you, Pooh. Great work on getting that up. And Bonds, I should have given you plenty of time.
My shout outs to the General 19 community, and my shout out is to, there's been a lot of increased activity in pre-mades recently. I just want to give a shout out to all the guilds that are stepping up and taking participation in all the games that have been happening this past few weeks. So shout out to the community and the leaders making it happen.
Oh, good. And for you guys listening in chat right now, Nikosi just put the link out there. All right, so for this week's topic, I am going to start it off with a very simple question. Why do you AFK? Why do you AFK from a BG? And there's a lot of different reasons people do this. And for the sake of this, I'm going to quickly eliminate the ones that are, dude, do you realize Monday was 420 and the pizza guy got here? No way am I finishing this game.
I don't think we should eliminate them. I almost think that we should give some of these the nominations they deserve. You have the oh hey, I had family come over. I had to leave. The oh hey, my food's ready. I have to leave. My food is more important than playing the rest of this game. The oh so famous, you guys are all dog shit and I'm better than you.
Wait, this is my favorite, and one that's quite literally happened to be. My cat spilled beer all over my keyboard.
See, it's funny because all these excuses or slide outs from the keyboard usually have happened at some point or another, but we just come to the terms that they happen on quite an often basis for some individuals.
All right, actually, Buns, real quick before we keep going.
Sure.
You're having that background noise issue real quick.
Okay.
So while you address that,
sure.
I'll keep kind of going here. And actually, the reason I kind of wanted to skip past, because there are legitimate real-life issues that come up, and you have to leave the game. If pizza's there, you got to get it. The guy's not going to wait 20 minutes for you to finish your game and come get the pizza. if you have a random surprise visit from your mother-in-law, she's going to be pretty pissed if it's like, why didn't you come answer the door? Intense game of Warsong Gulch. Sorry, Mom. That's not going to fly. What we're talking about is AFKing from a game because you don't like the way it's going. And it seems like at the very base, it's, dude, you AFK'd, you're an asshole. Why would you do that? And what I was telling with HB before the cast, when I initially brought this idea up, is that it's a symptom of a larger problem. There are reasons that people AFK that may be a little more, I don't know, in depth than just I hate my team. So I'll let you kind of kick it off from there, Buns.
It's funny because my mindset is this is one of the areas where my mindset has completely changed.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be very against AFKing and staying in the games for the full duration. I like to say that for the most part I stay in games for the full duration, but I totally understand why people leave at times, and I will leave on occasion.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's usually what sets me off to AFK would just be the continuous lack of awareness from the same group of people that I'm playing with over and over and over again. I'll give you an example. 2 weeks ago, we were playing. I was just doing pugs. I was queuing Horde. I was queuing Soul Druid. I was streaming, and I had not played We played 3 or 4 games from the last 2 minutes of every game in a row. We lost 1-1 or 2-2 by the tying cap for reasons. Yes. Did some of the games, did they have a better comp? Yes. Did some of the games, did we have a better comp? Definitely. But it didn't. It came down to AFK because I was so frustrated because it was the same general group of people I was playing with over and over and over and over again. 4 games in a row. And we made the same mistake every single game, and people are just ignorant to learn. And for me, there is a limit where I will go to where I want to help people get better and I want to have success.
Mm-hmm.
But you just hit this, okay, this is going to come in.
You hit the proverbial wall.
People hit their limits of where they can go. And those people hit their limits in that game. And there was nothing that I could have done, both with my playstyle and trying to be communicative with my team about how we should have played it. Because really how we should play the game is just common sense thing. Just coming on defense, everyone playing defense. But no, we feel it's necessary to get a cap while we were up a cap with 2 minutes left with minimal stacks. So
let's call that
short, disappointment in other players' gameplay led to me AFKing.
All right, so let's call that, say, disappointment/frustration. That's one symptom of the overall AFK problem. What would be another sort of symptom of the AFKing problem?
Another symptom of the AFKing problem is sometimes if a team some people AFK at the start of the game depending on what teams look like. They'll just flat up look at their team, look at the opposing team. If they don't have an advantage, or in a weird way, vice versa, people will AFK. You'll have people that'll AFK and be like, wow, that team's flavor, I'm leaving, I'm not playing this game. You'll have some people too, though, in a weird way, and this also is questionable because there's a fair amount of people that do this now, where they feel like their team has this huge advantage, and they'll AFK to try to get in on the other faction, but sometimes that actually has its own conundrum for making that decision, too. So
what do you mean by that?
So, let's say I'm queuing on a warrior, and my team already has 2 warriors. and we look like we're just going to roll through the game, and I'm like, I'm going to leave this game. I'm going to go on Alliance and see if I can get in on my Druid and maybe help the Alliance out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe you AFK, and that spot that you have on your game takes a few minutes to fill. So someone gets a game where it's 2 caps already in for the Horde. Or someone joins that game and is really a detriment to their team, and maybe you realize, wow, I actually was a bigger piece to that team than I realized, and that team ends up losing. So people will sometimes make their own decisions on how they believe the game will go before the gates open, for whatever their opinion may be. But I feel like that's a very common thing to do, especially at 19s. People will make decisions before the gates even open.
All right, so let's call that for the sake of the game.
Then I think you have the people that... Man, this is the one that I think's funny, is that sometimes you'll go, like, so many people in the forums, man, will just start ripping into people and ripping into guilds about AFKing, and then you see that person AFK from the game, and you're like, huh, that's kind of funny. I wonder, I'm not trying to sound like a dick here, but like one person I can think of off the top of my head who definitely has caught some slack for that on the forums in the past is definitely Mocha. I know, like, because sometimes you'll go on, this isn't recent at all, but you'll go on the forums, and there's some people that get pretty passionate about not AFKing and do some pretty big write-ups.
Yeah.
And like, I've said, for whatever reason, one or another, if you see one of those people AFK, you will be pretty sure that later on that night, they're going to catch some slack for it on the forums.
Yeah, and
so
shit, to be fair, I can't even remember the person's name who made the thread that inspired my thought for this. Can you remember who made that AFK thread on TI?
I'm pretty sure it was Kidney Popper or PP Popper. Or...
All right, I just wanted to give that person, PPPP Popper or PP Popper, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, like, that thread is the inspiration, so give that person credit where it's due, but okay, continue, sorry.
Well, you know what, in a weird way, this has been a reoccurring theme at 19s. And that thread specifically, is pointing at skill ratio, wall talent, Pizza Hut, whatever you know it by, and they've been doing it forever. And it's usually directed out at those guys in a lot of case scenarios.
But why do you think that is? Like, is there a reason for that? Is it fair? Is it unfair?
I mean, to be completely honest, whether or not you like the idea or not, you're against it in favor of AFKing, the entire culture was molded because of how Pizza ran his guild in the 19 bracket and still runs it at this time for such a long period of time. It just shaped the culture of 19s.
So
it's not really a matter of... Well, you can like it. You can like it. You can dislike it. You can take part in it. You can not take part in it. But at this point, there's just so many people that do take part in it that it's kind of part of the culture of the bracket at this point.
And that's kind of something that I wanted to touch on. And it's something I briefly mentioned. We kind of stopped talking specifically, so I didn't say everything we wanted to say beforehand. But originally, my first bracket was the 19s. And when I played 19s, yes, people AFK'd every now and then, but it wasn't like a cultural thing where, you have that frustration, you have for the love of the game, or what do we want to call the last one? Fuck it, every now and then, I don't know, whatever we want to call the last one. And
there's a lot.
Yeah.
Those are some of the big ones we hit, though.
So we'll just keep on those three, and we'll touch on the other ones as we go through. But and so I moved from that, and I went up to 39 and 29, where AFKing from a game was violently frowned upon. To the point where when one of the 39 resurgences came, and some of the 19s who came to play would AFK after the first cap. Or... actually, generally, after, their team got capped on, they'd AFK. Yeah. And a lot of times, they'd AFK, and their team would end up winning. Mm. And it's like, what are you doing, dude? Like, why are you leaving this game? And sometimes it happened, someone's waiting in queue for, 20 minutes, and they get in a game with 5 minutes left. Is that really, what good thing is going on there? Like, by you leaving because you say you got frustrated, just imagine the frustration put on that person where they've waited 20 minutes to get in the game. They get in the last couple minutes. They lose. They get to play at best 5 minutes, more than likely, let's say 2, because it's a 2-cap game and not one of those games where you leave and you end up winning. Why is that person, they're going to be like, fuck this, I just waited for what, 2 minutes? And then they didn't leave fast enough. They go to requeue, they get skipped the next game. So they've wasted, let's say, 40 minutes of their life trying to play a game because one person decided to AFK because it wasn't going the way they wanted.
Oh, and I think that you just totally nailed maybe you definitely nailed an argument down, and I'm trying to frame it and give it an identity, and I would say that's kind of the casual identity.
What do you mean? Like just what, say, an outside observer, how they frame their point of view on it?
No, but I think like the casual player that, specifically for, well, it could be any bracket, but I think we're gearing it a little to 19 right now at this point. So, someone who comes in, a lot of people feel that way. I mean, it sucks, and you've been through it. You join a game, there's 2 minutes left, and you're like, wow, we're down 2 caps. Like, oh joy! And you can tell. So and then sometimes you're like, wow, who AFK'd this game? And you try to like track down names sometimes, or like if there's 5 spots, you're like, oh, it must have been blank blank guild or blank blank group that left. And sometimes, okay, in a weird way, most of the time it's not enjoyable to join those kind of games, but sometimes there can be kickers to join in those games, and you get against a team.
What are the?
So like, sometimes if you know that there's like 2 groups queuing, and you join a game that's like 5 minutes left, and one team's up 5-0, and there's 5 spots missing, and you joined one of those spots, you're like, oh, so it looks like that team won the Pug Royale. Okay. All right. Well, at least they won. Props. Or like, oh, I fucking hate those guys. Like, whatever. Like, but overall, there's not a whole lot of positives. Overall, I don't think you can make an argument that it is beneficial for the community that people AFK. But
there will be people that they will attempt to rationalize this and say, this is why it's good, this is why it's acceptable. Can you think of any sort of argument to benefit those people? It's like, listen, this is why AFK. It's the net negative that you think is occurring is just your own personal opinion, and it's not really based on the actual facts of a bracket. Or is it?
I don't think that there's not too many, like, usually when people leave a game, in most cases, whether they want to admit it or not, it's usually because of what happened during the game. There are cases where, something comes on in real life and you leave.
But that's why I was saying,
right.
Let's focus on...
So, I guess what I am trying to say is that there's not too many excuses from a community standpoint for AFKing. Like, you don't really have, like... I think that the one that I started with earlier that I thought was super weird that I wanted to bring up is when people feel like at the start of the game they'll AFK and they'll hop on the other faction to play. And even that isn't really good, to be honest, because someone's going to join that game like 5 minutes, 10 minutes late. So, because the queue system sucks for some reason, it just doesn't fill spots fast enough. So that person, if it was instant, yeah, maybe it's a different story, but most of the time it's a delayed response to getting in that game. So you're pretty much still hurting your own team when you do that. For someone who's making the argument to say, like, why do I AFK and why do I think it's acceptable to AFK? It's just a mindset thing, and it's a very selfish opinion. And it's not necessarily wrong, but it is their selfish opinion. Because I can't think of I don't think I can think of very many benefits for a community. It may be beneficial to that individual person or group in time efficiency or getting out of there and saving frustration and saving anger and saving playing with what they think are not good players or whatever the excuse may be. So for the individual it may be beneficial, but for the whole, I can't really think of too many benefits.
Would it kind of be akin to, let's say you're playing, basketball is one of our go-to sort of analogies. So say you're playing a game, like a pickup game, because that's what pugs are, really, against another team, and say you got posterized, like our buddy on the Spurs, who Blake Griffin went ham on, right? And so that dude, instead of continuing, he's like, screw this. There's no way this is going to go in my favor. They just pick up the ball and punt it into the stands.
Yeah, but then you can't play basketball, and I would say
it'll take.
Goes on. But no, I get what you're saying. It'd be like, it's basically they just walk off the court and leave. Like if you're playing 5 on 5.
Yes, okay, that would be better. Yeah.
2 people just walk off the court and leave. You're like,
And then you have like Duncan, like, yo, dude, which one of you guys can come in? I know you got to wait 5 minutes to like check in and sub in and check in with the people on time court table, but you need to get in here. Like, now, I'm sorry, dude, I got to wait. And then by the time he gets in, it's like, what the fuck, bro? What the fuck? Like, if you were afraid of the consequences that could potentially occur, if you're afraid of losing, then you probably shouldn't queue up to play a PvP match, maybe? Because that is an option. You're not going to win every game. And if the only thing you care about is winning, I get how it's like, yes, we must do everything we can to win. The whole end result of everything, like especially say at 19s where competition is, the end result, and you have the Twin Cup coming up. But this isn't a pre-made. This is a pug. You can't control these things.
Man.
So when you get into the game, like you can't control these things. And I feel like that should be something that is understood upon hitting that enter Warsong Gulch. And if you're looking at the team makeup and you don't think it's going to work out for you, and you pretty much know you're going to be leaving 5 minutes into the game, leave 10 seconds in after you've scanned it.
I actually don't really know how to respond here because, like we've kind of mentioned, like I can't think of too many benefits for community perspective of leaving the game. I also at the same time, like I'm not gonna go suggesting to people like how to efficiently AFK from games. So I'm not sure how to respond there, but what I was biting to chomp you off and cut you off there. It's all an ego thing.
Do you really think that's what it comes down to, is the ego?
It's an ego thing and like weird OCD shit. Like people don't want to get caught on screenshots. People don't want to be associated with losing or playing with certain players. People don't want to have that loss on their record for whatever numerical value. People don't want to sometimes play the rest of the game. They feel like, for whatever reason, they have been let down or there's nothing left to be gained from playing the rest of this game. So you're looking at something that is a community issue, but ultimately comes down to a very individual kind of decision making. Because, if someone's going to AFK a game, they don't give a shit about why they don't give a shit about the rest of the people if they're AFKing the game.
Yeah.
So it's a very individual decision that has a very big impact on a community. And I think in a bracket where, look, you go from 19s having tons of activity back in like BC Wrath.
Mm-hmm.
And as we progress, this, I say during Wrath, Kata, Mop, it all, like, the AFK thing kind of continued, and you can kind of even associate names with people that will AFK, and are kind of notorious for doing so. But then you also have people that will go along with it, or feel like, wow, this really is just this bad of a game, and if they left, I'm going to leave with them too, that kind of attitude. I used to be really against AFKing, but I can totally understand where people are coming from.
Well, Nikosi brings up a good point, and it might be where you were kind of going to go there, and it's that what he said is AFKing happens 90% of the time due to them being bad games. And that is, of course, like, why do you want to stay in this bad game? But how do the games get better if there's this constant cycle of people AFKing, new people coming in? Like, H-Speed, remember when I got into a game on 20 to 29s, and I zone into the flag room, and who is waiting for me? You and Kuntz. Okay?
This is really engraved into your head.
It is, because I got raped in ways that it was awful. It was a terrible experience for me because I zone in. I'm like, all right, it takes you a few seconds to figure out what the hell is going on. Next thing I know, the two of you are barreling down on me, and I'm like, okay, I'm so happy this is the game I got into when I waited 10 minutes to get into. I mean, they don't make, I guess this is the kind of thing, and we've been saying, like, well, there's really no positive, and I think this kind of reinforces the fact. What is the positive? How does it make the game better because that person left? Yes, the game was bad for you. It's going to happen every now and then. That's kind of the dice you roll when you queue up for a pug game. But then you bring someone else in. Not only do you throw them into your shoes, but potentially put them in a much worse position when they've been waiting time to take your spot in line. And it's like, hey, man, you know what? That pie's about to hit my face. Let me just move a step to the left. You take my spot, man. And they're like, oh, dude, thanks. Fuck you. I'm not waiting in this line again.
No,
I'm going to go hell somewhere else.
No. Like, look, I'm not. I know you're just explaining. You're just taking this a step farther, but I'm not arguing with you.
No, I know. I'm not implying that you are. I'm just.
It is definitely not good for the community, but I can totally understand where people are AFKing. We're in a meta right now that is absolutely. There are flavor classes, and there's classes that, unless you're a really good player, an aware player, you just can't make work in Warsong at all.
So then that's
have that. Let me take this a step farther.
Okay.
So when you have that, it creates for really flavor games because people are queuing up on classes that are flavor to have success. And it's more about, well, you know what? It's a mix between these two things. It's a mix between what class you queue on and how good the class is, and a mix between your understanding of your role on how that class plays out in the specific Warsong and what role you need to take on for that game. A mix between those two things usually decides how games go. And while there could be a ton of people, you could have games where people AFK because they just look at the other side and they look at their side and they see the rainbow on the other side and all they see is
the grass is always greener.
pink, light blue, and purple. And they do a quick AFK cat syndrome for 15 minutes and they sit one out. There's also games where you join the game and you play and it looks like the teams are relatively balanced and you play it out and someone that's playing X flavor class just does an awful job at playing their role and completely lets the team down and people AFK because they don't want to be associated with the game where someone played that bad. And I think that in the 19 bracket, that's more a common reason of why people AFK. And
I mean, is the social stigma is that strong in the bracket?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you have people that are, like, there's still the whole elitism thing in 19s for sure. And that's where I was saying it's like people sometimes just literally won't take the loss because of someone else's mistake. They don't want to be associated with that person's mistake. And even in a pug setting, like, people will totally chomp down on people at 19s for that. And even if they won't do it verbally, that's a way that they'll express it non-verbally.
You know what I think's interesting about kind of what we've been talking about? What was one of your favorite things about playing free-to-play in Warsong Gulch?
Outmaneuvering people.
So why can that concept not transfer to 19, where you're on the team that is, let's just call it what it is. It's gimped, whether it's by class or by players. Why can that same mindset not transfer to those games? Does it still go back to the social stigma / elitism / ego?
The reason why you can have success at 20 to 29 on 20s, trying to overcome the odds, well, I guess against 24s back when I was playing, is I want to make this clear. 20s should never beat 24s. But it happens because there's bad players that aren't aware of what's going on, and there's people that are giving themselves an opportunity to win, and that still carries to 19s. It's just because, even though 19s is the better bracket, there are there are still tiers of players, and you can identify them, point them out, list them out. Do they have a good enough understanding? Do they have good enough awareness? It's less about, right now in 19s, it's less about understanding your actual class mechanics and mechanically being better than the other people on the team that are playing your class. And it's more about, are you at the right place in the right time, and are you filling your role? And there's people that still struggle with that. And even so, when you ask the question, it's like, can you not just turn games around by playing the right way that your team needs to play with whatever mold your team needs to take on based on class comp? Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times it's no, because you just don't have good enough players. And the difference between 19s and 24s, the one difference I would say is that at 20 to 24 or 29, whatever you want to call it at this point, the players are so much worse in that bracket that you actually can carry a game with like one or two people being really smart.
Okay.
At 19s, you can't do that.
So let's bring it.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no. Finish what you were saying. I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought you were done.
You can't do it at 19s because even though you can still make tiers of players, there's going to be enough common sense going around that they're not going to let you freely cross the map by yourself on a Resto Druid in most cases. And if that happens, I guarantee you the other side will go scared cat syndrome.
Okay. So let's take this a step further. The 19 bracket, I don't think it's any secret, has seen a large influx of new players directly resulting from the Twink Cup.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And there are two, actually there's more than two, but let's just say the two base ways. You can look at this as a good thing, or you can look at this as a bad thing. The bad thing is it promotes those games where there are people either on your team or the opposing team that just don't know what they're doing because they're not familiar with, they might not even be familiar with what their role is. They may know how to play their class very well, but not familiar how their role fits into the 19 meta. And then if you have these new people coming in, ideally, this is, I'm trying to think, all right. This should be, in my opinion at least, and I'm not the most active 19 person, you are, so you can let me know what the general consensus is for this bracket, is that these growing pains should be expected and embraced for the overall health of the bracket. And if you're going to have people that get in that game and they're like, you know what? Who the fuck is that guy? Who the fuck is that girl? I'm not playing with them. I don't know who they are. I know 8 out of 10 names on that other team. But you know what? I'll stick it out for 10 minutes. Then they go down a cap, and they AFK out. And one of those other new people gets in. And that new person that got into that game that shit is a representative of 4 people. That person's testing out the bracket for him. And this happens to them 2 or 3 times in a row. Or maybe 2 out of 6 times. And they're like, dude, it's not worth it. You're just going to get an AFK game where you're getting farmed or quote-unquote contained. So you just turned away 6 people by the very seemingly innocuous or innocent action of AFKing out of a bad game.
Ooh, man, you're not going to like where I'm turning this one, but I'm going to turn it back to something that I've talked about before in a different way. It's kind of a filter system, Yubi.
I'm fully aware of the filter system.
Yeah.
But like, how tight do you want that filter to be? Do you want that filter to be so tight that the only people that pass through it are basically those of which have already gone through, and maybe 1 out of every 10 find their way? Or do you want the filter to be a little bit looser, so let's say 5 out of 10 make it through, 2 of which become players like, oh shit, I need to watch out for that motherfucker.
Oh man, I wish.
And then you have, yes, but I mean, okay, we're working at best case scenarios apparently from the way you're talking. I mean, it's when the filter is so tight, you're restricting the ability for a bracket to grow. And I think that's something that needs to be taken into consideration when talking about AFK, the maturation and growth of a bracket. And when you have the Twink Cup coming in and you want all these new people to come in, you want to embrace the growth, you want more teams to join in on it. Correct me if I am wrong, and I feel like you're going to tell me I'm wrong. But perhaps some concessions need to be made for the overall health and stability of the bracket.
Man, this all just... I keep going back to it, man, but it all just goes back to players that I think AFK on a consistent basis do it on a very selfish impact, and it has ripple effects for the bracket. And I think some players are conscious of the ripple effects, and other players haven't looked that far outside their window to realize that the grass is pretty... there's some poop on the grass. It needs to be cleaned up.
It's like, listen, they forgot their pooper scoopers, man.
But, and I'm not really saying I'm on one side or the other, because I would say for the most part, I don't AFK games. I do a pretty good job at not. I will say that there are a few games I've AFK'd and gone on the other faction if I felt that my team is superiorly better. And there's 1 or 2 games in a blue moon where I actually get really fucking pissed off in AFK. But when I do it, man, I don't hesitate. If I make the decision, I will do it. And in my mind, you're looking at someone who has gone completely through this system. And in one sense, to be acceptable of reasons why people may AFK games, while I don't think it's good to AFK on a consistent basis, but having an understanding for why people may AFK and coming to the realization that it's human for people to AFK means that you've played 19s long enough to understand how the bracket works. Now, for someone that's starting... Let's time out. For someone who's starting, let me give you a realistic 19 view. Most people who start the bracket come into the bracket with literally nothing but their Dave.
Please tell me you say
Dave created BOAs.
I thought you'd be like nothing but dreams and hope.
No. They come in with whites that they got when they leveled up.
Is that really still a thing? Like, you're actually seeing that being a prevalent...
Yeah, and no rings. No rings at all, let alone enchants. No rings. And then they come in on Dave's created BOA. So they'll have Dave's head, Dave's neck, Dave's shoulders, Dave's cape, Dave's chest.
Wait, who's Dave?
Dave is the character made by Dave, the BOAs. So Dave, who logged on his 19 today, leveled his 19, capped his XP, made his BOAs on Dave. Did not go to the auction house. Barely could cough up 10 gold. So, for people that are longtime members of the bracket, there's got to be some disappointment on that end, too, of having players that come in that literally do nothing for you right before the gates even start, just because they are not geared. And while on one side it's like, that's part of the system of going through and joining a bracket, on the other side, I could say, okay, that is part of the system in going through the bracket, and you're probably going to get a lot of shit for coming in under geared, and people may leave that game.
See, I think that harkens back to things we've talked about on multiple podcasts, and to, I think, your most famous phrase, dress for success. Now, no one expects you to be in full Burberry, Louis Vuitton sort of garb, but you can probably get some Armani Express up in there, or just regular Armani, and test out the bracket. You don't have to be imperfect, but it's the same thing we've been talking about. It's if you go in there, like you're saying, in whites and shit gear, you're not only tainting your experience, but the experience of your players on your team. So that, in a very weird way, I guess, lends credence to I am not dealing with this. Like, it's almost like a sign of disrespect to the bracket.
No, it is. It is. And to people that have been playing the bracket in a long time, it really is. And, in a weird way, that's why I say it's almost part of, like, a filtering system in itself, where it's like, can you go through the day in, day outs of a bracket and figure out if you like the bracket or not? And it's just not going to go away ever. It's not... People are always going to AFK. It's usually going to be the same names. You may say some names change in and out, but it's going to be the same people. They're always going to AFK. It's not something that's ever going to change. It's how are people around them going to handle the situation. In a time right now where I think numbers on certain nights can be an issue to get games going. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
an issue. But I think on those nights, people are more cognizant that if they AFK of the repercussions. But I also think there's people that don't give a shit either way. Like,
But I also think it's interesting that you bring it up. Like, there are some nights where people are aware of what they're doing, they're cognizant, so they're less likely to AFK. So it seems like those people know what they're doing is hurtful, and they're trying to mitigate the damage.
Oh,
So
it depends on the.
so,
It's all selfish. It depends who it is. So,
and that almost drives the selfish point home more because it's like, all right, listen, I know if I have, say, 15 people on my battle tag, someone else has 8 on their battle tag, we'll be able to get games. I'm going to AFK. But we waited a half hour for this queue. I probably can't AFK, so I'm going to have to suck it up this time.
yeah, no, I think it depends on a lot of things, man. We're talking about a variable here that has so many humanistic factors that it's really hard to pinpoint.
It is,
What
in a weird way,
makes-
one of the most human elements as far as this goes. Like, there's no real technical aspect to AFKing.
Right.
It is a 100% conscious decision, unless you get... Should I bring out the evil DDoS? Or like, you lose connection, something happens outside, you know what I mean? But it is a very human choice of, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to look at my surroundings, I'm going to evaluate the situation, and I'm going to choose to take a debuff or log on to a different tune. Now, the Cozy brought something up, where he's seen these people play X number of games, not improve. And that is also something we've touched on a lot, and that's another thing I think that, which Nikosi brought up, is one of the symptoms, let's say, of the AFK. It's, think of a catchy little phrase for that one, Buns.
What? Of what?
For those that keep playing but don't improve gear, don't grow any sense of awareness or anything like that. Should you just call them the lost ones, the lost boys and girls of the Gulch?
I don't know, man. You put me on a spot for like making creativity. So that's pretty rude. Usually creativity comes out, but if I had to say anything, I would say it'd be like the tortoise and the hare syndrome, where the tortoise doesn't grow a brain. So
He's not smart enough to hop in the car while the hare is running his ass off.
right. So it's just like, and that was awful, by the way. But you put me on the spot, so you did this, Yumi. But there's just, yeah, I'm really happy we nailed it. It really is such a humanistic thing on why specific people. It could be game to game why people AFK. It could be one reason for one. It could be one for another. And how people handle it. How people handle those situations of when someone AFKs is a completely different thing in itself. And also very humanistic on how people respond.
And you know what? God, I can't believe I'm actually coming up with ways to sympathize with AFKers, because if it hasn't been made clear at this point, I'm not a proponent of the AFKing. But I do kind of sympathize with the fact that if you've played a game with the same person, let's say a dozen times, right? That should be enough for them to get a feel. Like, they won't know exactly what to do, but get a feel for sort of gearing options, what doesn't work. Do they need versatility? Do they need haste? Do they need more stam? Do they need more agility? Or whatever, pick your secondary fucking stat. And if they stay the same, and especially when you see, like, there's a lot of options in this day and age of Warcraft to learn how to gear. And if it's something that you don't know how to do, say you've never played before, it may just be as simple as, say, like, you doing a macro that's like, bro, TI, bisnation, go ahead. And maybe they don't know about that. So maybe it would be something as easy as making a macro at the start of a game. If you see someone that fits into that, what was it you called it?
I don't know.
All right, then we will just forget that happened.
New players joining the bracket.
The Lost Boys and Girls Club.
No, you were trying to talk about the turtle thing, and that turtle thing had nothing to do with what you were just talking about.
Well, no, like, the turtle would be the person that's slow to get on the get up to.
No, but I was okay. The turtle thing. Never mind. I don't want to talk about the turtle anymore. That was not a good
Well, that's why I
metaphor
tried
in
to
the
move
first place.
past it, man.
But you brought it up. Okay. Well,
All right, so yes, there's a lot of options available for people that don't know. And
right.
maybe they're just not familiar enough, and it could be as simple as you saying, check this out. And maybe that, will turn the tide in that person's development.
Where am I going to take this? I want to take this from. You brought something up earlier that I thought was interesting, and I'm going to take it back there where you're saying that I think that there are a lot of players out there. It's a combination of what I said and what you said.
Mm-hmm.
It's a combination of my ego is too big to stay in this game, combined with I feel disrespected with players' approach on our team that I no longer want to be in this game and associate with these people. I think it's a mix of those two things as the main humanistic factors, because you'll have some people that be like, yeah, I'm not playing with this guild. This guild is just awful to play with. They just make bad decisions on a consistent basis, and I have nothing to. I don't even want to be near. I want to be in Minnesota, and they can be in Brazil for all I care for. I'm out of here. So you can have that. You could also have someone who's like joins a game, and then there's 3 players, full Dave BOAs, white off slots, no rings. And they're just like, yeah, you know what? I will not be here for this game. See you later. Send me a postcard if you can afford it. Obviously not. Go get rings. And maybe that comment comes out before they leave. But I definitely think it's a mix of those two things where someone feels like they are on a level that is above where the rest of their team is and they don't want to associate with them. Or... Well, no, that's pretty much what it is. I don't think there really is an or. Oh, no, there is an or. Or they feel like the players that they have played with in that game have let them down or have made such poor decisions that they no longer want to be in the game. And those are two things that are a little different from each other. And I think we've covered both of them, but I just really wanted to nail it on the head there. I think that the best part... Okay. I think AFKing can be hilarious, and I love when forum banter comes up about people AFKing. It's so funny because I used to be one of those people that was really against AFKing, and I've talked about this on past casts, but like back in Cata, like I hated Pizza's Guild, like all of them, because they would all do that shit. They'd all AFK, and like we would try to kick them from games so that they would leave at the beginning of the game.
Well, that's a real thing, though. It's like if they're going to leave after a cap, it's going to put you at an even more significant disadvantage than you would have been, potentially, I should say, at the start of the game if they just sort of left. And you got people in that would at least stick it out.
I think the forum banner that comes from it is hilarious. And here's how I evaluate the forum banter, because this is what people don't want to hear that I'm going to say here, but you can usually tell that the people that are complaining on the forums are the lesser players.
I think for the most part, and again, they're not going to want to hear it, but generally that's correct outside of a few specific individuals who I'm not going to mention by name.
Oh, no, and I'm not mentioning anyone by name either, but I think, this is a reoccurrence that's happened for such a long time period that you could just go back on your timetable and kind of look at it and be like, wow, that's like pretty accurate. It's kind of one of those things that's like everyone knows, everyone has a consensus for it, but no one wants to be the guy to come out and say it. But in general, I think that you have, I think it's also the lesser players, but it's also the younger players too sometimes, where you just have like younger World of
That
Warcraft
self-entitlement
players.
issue.
Wait, what? No, maybe I'm not feeling you on that, but I was thinking on the lines of like younger players who are just like so confused why people could ever AFK a game, and they just, oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, but usually I think for the most part it's the better players that AFK games, the quote unquote better players, I should say.
Well, let me
And
Sorry, go. I keep
no, because
cutting you
the
off.
reasons why is almost exactly what we were talking to. It's like they feel like that someone on their team has let them down and they no longer want to be associated with that person. Or they feel like other people in the game are not at the level of acceptance to where they want to be in the game with that person and leave the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that goes back to the selfish, egotistical mindset of I am better than the people or in a higher elite level than most people in this game, and I do not want to play this game if I don't feel I'm going to be getting genuine support and a genuine look at winning this game with the players on my team. So whether or not you think that is right or wrong, I think that that is a pretty valid opinion on kind of nailing down why and who AFKs.
So, what about this concept in that are expectations unrealistic for what a pug game should be, and have they been made unrealistic because of the closed off atmosphere that has become XP off games?
Whip that one at me with different wording.
All right. So you have people that have been 19 veterans for. I mean, the core 19s right now are veterans that have been playing for years, right?
Yeah.
And what they know 19s can be and have been. And you can translate to any bracket. I think 39s, and I don't even want to talk about that really. But knowing what has happened, what has been, and what can be, and the potential for bracket, does that also influence the behavior and promote that AFKing atmosphere? Where they are like, God, I have played so many games in this bracket, and at a pug level, they have been amazing. And this just is not meeting my expectations. So, like, you know what? I'm AFKing.
I think
Where what a pug is, I mean, what is a pug? A pickup group, right?
yeah.
It's going to be whoever is queuing up. What you're looking for is that game that has the proper class composition, the properly skilled players playing that proper class composition. There are other avenues this game now affords you. So why is the pug element being held to the same standard as of, say, the heyday of the bracket? Why is nostalgia influencing actuality?
I don't think nostalgia is the right word because I think what happens is there are players that have a lot more experience and have a lot better understanding of what's going on in Warsong and what class potential has. And when they see players that do not fill the roles or do not make the job of what their class's potential can be,
Mm-hmm.
and cause. Let's throw a 19 term out there. Throw the game.
Oh God.
People will people will leave because they're like, a great example of that is I think is Hunter, and I think that there's so many different ways to play Hunter. There's so many
Mm-hmm.
ways that you can do it efficiently, but there's still so many people that do it wrong. And if you have a Hunter and they're not playing defense, what are you doing? In most situations, your Hunter should be on D or floating D or looking for FC or stuff like that. So if you have your Hunter that's playing mid, you lose mid, and they get a cap, and two people start yelling at you in battle chat, and then AFK.
Mm-hmm.
It almost goes back to what we were saying a few weeks ago. It's like taking constructive criticism, too. It's like some people just cannot wrap their head around what their class can offer. Here's the thing with 19s, is that 19s is a competitive bracket for some people. It's extremely competitive, and it's probably the most competitive pug bracket in World of Warcraft. But while there is that competitive atmosphere, you also have people that are really there for the casual part and just making a twink and being there for the experience. So you can almost expect in such a conflicting bracket where you have such a range of people that the AFKing problem could be a huge issue, because you could have Grandpa Jim coming in on his rogue looking to get some one-shots on people coming out of the GY while their FC doesn't get sapped once a game. And I'm sure he's going to get some comments from that from players who are looking for objective-based players to fill the role.
Mm-hmm.
So, man, it's pretty humanistic. I keep going back to that, but it really comes down to expectations, missing or meeting those expectations, and how a personal ego handles the situation they're given. I don't even know if there's too much more to say on that.
I was just about to say, that sounds like a Bun's point.
That really wraps it up for, the one thing I do want to talk about, man, I don't think we talked about enough. There's two things we haven't talked about enough.
Okay.
I think the forum banner is hilarious that comes with AFKing. I honestly think it's so funny. And when I was like, I didn't actually really finish my story. So I went from like someone in Kata and Laughing Soul for the Win that was pretty dead set against AFKing to someone where I am now in Warlords of Draenor, where if I AFK, I don't feel bad about it. I'm not saying I do it on an often basis, and I'd like to say I don't do it on an often basis. But I don't sit there and regret the decision. And it's funny, man, because I think some people will go through their entire WoW career being very dead set against it. You'll also have people that go in and out of it, and then you'll also have people who just completely don't care or grow through it, and they're like, you know what, AFKing's whatever, or I don't give a shit about AFKing, I fucking AFK all the time, kind of mindset. So, going to the forums, man, because that's where it's going to come out, because they're not going to be able to say their 2 cents in a game where the person's already left, so it always comes out about 30 minutes after the game's happened.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the forum specifically, what's been going on this week, right? This is going to make... Okay.
Let it rip.
This is going to be fun. So,
let it rip.
There's been a lot of forum banter recently on not only Twink Info, but the WoW forums talking about, Twink Cup coming up, people who AFK all the time. Do we really want these people representing us?
Mm-hmm.
Specifically more on the WoW forums, too. We've seen recently a lot of the DDoS issues being brought up, and do we want these people actually playing in the tournament? Are they actually good for the bracket? Etc. Can you imagine how awful of a tournament it would be if you actually kicked out the guilds that AFK on a consistent basis?
Well, who would you have left?
I know, but I don't think people the weird thing is I'm gonna say a few things now that are very specific. I was reading through some of the posts on the forums on the Twink Info thread that PP Popper brought up, and he made this whole post, and I read through it, and I thought it was really interesting. And one of the main people that was responding back was Sipes. And Sipes went down this huge post actually giving a really detailed response on why he feels like AFKing is okay and why he doesn't, why his guild does it, trying to explain his point of view. And then the very next comment from PP was like, he basically just said, I just made this entire thread to get a reaction out of you. Thank you for giving me a reaction. You can shut up now. That was basically his response. I don't know if you caught that, but that was basically his response. And now I look at that and it's like, so did you just do this for a laugh? Did you do it for attention? Because I also don't think, on one side of me it's like, okay, yeah, it's bad for the bracket that people are AFKing. But could you imagine playing in a bracket without the people who AFK and make the games a higher quality too? Because I think that there's a lot to be said, where I was talking about earlier, where it's usually the higher quality players leave.
Mm-hmm.
So in actuality, if people are imagining excluding these guilds or players from an open bracket of queuing and really don't want these people playing, it's like, okay, I mean, you're gonna have your pretty dinosaur PvP then. There's not ooh, it would turn into a cesspool of twinks so fast, and that is supposed to sound wrong, but it would get real bad real fast because it's different mindsets, man. It's different people. You can't if you just exclude or try to ostracize people for their decisions, on one side, I think people need to come full circle around this happens. I can be opposed or for it, but it happens. Let's wrap our head around the fact that I can agree or disagree to play with the people that make these decisions or support the people that make these decisions, but understand that as a whole, it's also part of the community that these people make those decisions.
That's where I was going to go. It's the AFKing now in the 19 bracket. I mean, it's Rome, and when in Rome, it's the way of the land. It's the way things are done. So you can't just say, let's kick these people out for doing what all Roman/19 tinkers do.
Yeah, I think it's okay. So let's say perfect world, right? Let's just say timeout. Perfect world.
All right.
Let's say I don't even know how to say this in not a corny way. Let's just say Blizzard's had it, goes down a rip list, like, we are taking all these people that have AFK'd out of games. They're never playing again. They're permabanned. Could you imagine the actual repercussions of what would happen? First off, you would have less games happening because a lot of those people are core members of the 19 community. There would physically be less pops. Second off, the game quality would go down drastically. And the banter, everything the community stands for, activity, guild activity, rivalries, Horde versus Alliance, class balance, everything would be altered because you have taken those players out of the game. And ultimately, if you kicked everyone who's like AFKs or supports that kind of mentality and just took them out of the Twin Cup, you would literally have the floor has just dropped 3 stories.
Well, it's weird too that you say that, because it's like we've been talking about how AFKing definitely not a good thing, but AFKing is an accepted component of 19 culture. So it seems like a really weird dynamic or dichotomy that exists within the players of that bracket, where a lot of people understand that there can be a net negative effect, but it's still an accepted practice.
And you know what's funny, UB? Consistently, the people that are making these threads very much against AFKing or chiming in. Man, you know what actually is funny too? I love the people who chime in on the AFK threads. They don't actually make the thread, but they're like, I fucking hate 19s. Those scumbags AFKers. And I love the people who chime in on that stuff too. I've refrained from commenting on TI because if I shared my opinions, I would pretty much get banned from the site at this point.
I don't know. I think we've made it a point where you can say some crazy shit and they'll still let you do your things.
Oh man, stripped of color, full of passion. So
yeah.
But you know what? Usually, that's kind of. I'm not thinking of the exact right term. But when someone goes to the point of making a thread, you are the author of making a thread about AFKing and you're upset at people AFKing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I did think of it. It's like it's a rite of passage. And it totally determines how you react to that thread will determine if you continue playing 19s or not. And usually the people that chime in on those threads are usually people that had not made the rite of passage and do not play 19s anymore.
But let me ask you a very simple question. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Or is that... I'll just keep it there. You think it's a good thing?
I think it's a good thing because it's a filter system, man. That's what 19s is. It's all about, put up or shut up. Nuts on the table or get out. That's kind of what 19s is, all right? So, in my mindset, if you can't take the
it's nut up or kitchen, shut up.
Yeah. For me, I think it's awesome. I used to be, and it's so weird because I say it's a rite of passage because I think it is, because I think that you can understand how the bracket works, or you can totally go down this path of being I hate 19s. They all AFK. They're all a bunch of teenagers that can't play the game and use internet I can't even finish that, but it's like so bad, man. It's funny. I love the forum banner that comes with it, and I'm so happy there's people like Idiot and Hass that are back just completely like out there just to troll on the forums now again.
Actually, you know what? Let's give a post intro shout out to Idiot, who in my opinion is possibly the #1 troll of all time.
Oh man, I specifically I love when Idiot comments on the forums, man. Like, because that's someone who understands how the bracket works and completely just. Hass actually summed it up better in a post that I actually was not for, but I just enjoy the posts themselves. But he's like, I think he was quoting Sight too. He's like, I was just fishing, Tinker. You took the bait. But that's like what it actually is. Like, some people will literally just go on there and say shit that they completely understand, but will say the opposite way of how they feel just to bait people. And he baited out a 1.5-page post. So, some of that stuff's kind of funny, man. I think the forum banner that goes along with it is enjoyable because it gets people riled up, and if nothing, I think AFKing in one mindset is bad for the immediate bracket, but in another mindset, it almost provides the entertainment for the forum. So how much can you actually hate against AFKing? Because it definitely brings some flavor and emotion to the bracket.
I'll give this, I think, immediately, like especially as far as provoking some forum comments. It has a lot of, say, like immediate forum banter, which, as you've said many times, like the drama feeds 19s. But I think long term, it may have a negative impact.
But how? See, time out, because I, like, look.
Wait, have you just swung full? You just did a 180? You're like, no, dude, the AFK's good. It promotes the drama, which promotes the bracket. So,
well,
good, AFK.
Look, I said that AFKing from games, you can't really say that it doesn't have a negative, like, you can't say it's positive for the bracket that people are joining the games with 5 minutes left and they miss a game. Like, I think it's pretty hard to argue in that standpoint that it's good for the bracket that someone has joined a game and it's 2 down, 3 minutes left.
Okay.
But at the same time, I'm also... I feel like I'm a...
Deep breath. Let's go.
Well, I don't even know what I wanted to say anymore. I skipped a point. No. I understand why people AFK. And I don't hesitate. If I AFK, I don't feel bad about it. I don't say I do it on a consistent basis, but if I AFK a game, I'm not... There's a reason I AFK'd, and I'm not feeling bad about it. And then to go with that, I also think that it feeds discussion on the forums, which 19s literally lives off that. And with some of the... there's been some threads. I'm so happy, actually, that thread came up, because there's literally been some threads that have come up that's just, like, so lame, being like, man, I play 19s, there's no drama. Let's talk about drama.
Actually, I feel like there was a thread that came up that was like, where's the drama? And I think, Curly started it, maybe, which makes complete sense. But
yeah, but, like, that was, like, that's lame, man. Like, that's those threads. If you have to, like, name a thread that, it's not drama-worthy. You know what I mean? There were some comments on there that I think were drama-worthy that no one blew out of proportion. But I'm not going to comment on that, actually, because that's a whole other podcast. The last thing that, we really didn't talk about, let's just not talk about it. Let's just save it for another
Wait, cast. No, I would like to at least give a tease. I'd like to hear what the thought is.
No, I'm not. You brought it up. No, okay. Well, we were going to talk about how, like, the whole GY farming map edition was going to add into this cast.
Yes, okay.
But I don't even want to talk about it because it's not really... It doesn't really fit into the discussion because it's a it's going to change the mechanics of how Warsong is playing it a little bit.
You know what? You're right. We should save this for another cast. So, I shouldn't have asked you to bring it.
No. I think it's okay to bring it up because it almost makes the distinction that it's actually really wouldn't.
It could have a direct effect on the AFKing, though, right?
Why? No, I don't think it would at all. Why? Why would the reasons that we have just said, why would having fences up on your GY change that? Because timeout. Okay, no, let's stop. Do we want to get into this? Do you want to get into this?
I really do think this should be saved for another cast because we could go for another hour, and I think we've already gone for an hour.
All right.
So it might be Bo time here if you want to put some Derek Rose, what G stands for type thing.
JGB. You already know the G, folks. Facial. Going to the rim. Over Zaza Pachulia. 31-9, folks. 2-0. Going for the sweep. Let's go, Bulls. Get it.
All right, and you guys know at this point, I'm sure where to find us, but I will repeat just in case, the BIS Nation on YouTube, bisnation.net /BIS Nation. Buns, where can they find you on the Twitch?
Twitch.tv/FearTheBuns, @FearTheBuns on Twitter. Hit me up, streamlings.
I like how you said my word instead of strumlings right there. And we're going to end it on that. Next week, guys.
Peace.